Good afternoon. This is Candace Dawson, and I am the Director of eLearning for the Office of eLearning for the Department of Education. And I want to welcome everybody this afternoon to one of our 21st Century Learning Lab webinars. Today's is Riding the Storm Out, Virtual Options for Learning. Our producer today is from the eLearning team, Mary Carnahan, and she is there in the chat room window and answer any questions you might have if you're having any kind of issues with what's going on today. The chat, I want to remind everyone that as our hour goes along, if you have questions to ask of some of the presenters or of each other, please put those in the chat window, and we'll try to make sure that our presenters get around to answering those. We also do archive this entire presentation so that if you find great value in it and want to share it with others later, hopefully, usually by the beginning of next week, you'll see that up on our website and you can get to it archived there. So I hope that'll help everyone today. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide, if you will, Mary. So the Office of eLearning, we have lots of things that go on outside of our virtual option for inclement weather. So many things that we try to do to connect all of our learners, all of our educators and administrators across the state around lots of great resources to connect you with each other and with lots of opportunities for learning and leading our students to success in this digital age. So one of the things that we're doing right now as October has got underway is we're part of the national, actually probably international, Connected Educators Month. And you can see on the screen, we have a lot of different things going on, and I won't go through those now because I know our 3 districts have lots to share. But I would invite you to please, and at the end of the presentation today, we'll have all of our contact information, but I would invite you to please go to our website to find out all the different activities and things we have going on for Connected Educator Month. There's some great tasks, things that you can do inside of our new online communities of practice that can earn you some badges and get you even more connected. So I hope you'll take a chance to look at those and find out more about those. So next slide, if you will. So today's topic, again, is that riding the storm out. I know last winter we all know was quite a challenge for everyone across our state, really across the nation, I think, in terms of the weather. And Superintendent Ritz was adamant about providing options to our districts so that we wouldn't have kids in school on the 4th of July. And one of those was the virtual option, using online learning to provide makeup days, or even in the case of one of our presenters today, on the actual day of inclement weather. So that option is again available this coming year, and the application and the information for that is on our website and just opened on October 1st. So we wanted to have this webinar and call upon some of our great leaders from around the state that has experienced this last year in different forms, and have them share what it looked like, how they went about it, and what you might consider if you're considering this year. I talked to a lot of people about this topic, and I know they're going to share today. This is not just something that you can kind of wave your hand and say, oh, we have computers and devices, so we're going to learn on, virtually. And it's a lot bigger list than that, and especially to do it on a day on the actual event. So I'm very thankful for our friends from Maconaquah and Yorktown and Zionsville for being here today and sharing their expertise and their challenges and experiences. So we're going to start with Maconaquah, and I'm going to turn it over to them and let them share what they know.
Thank you, Candace.
Judy, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I certainly can. Thanks, Judy, for being here today.
Sure. Thanks, Candace, for asking me to do this. My name is Judy Off, and I'm the Technology Director at Maconaquah. And we did some e-learning days last year. In fact, we did 4 of them virtually on snow days. So the actual day of snow is the day that we stayed home, or our students and our staff, and we did virtual learning. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about that and how we prepared for it and how it went. So if you'd like to go to the next slide.
It should be, unless I hear you, then you would be sure.
we decided that there were 4 areas of preparation that we wanted to focus on to get everybody ready, from teachers to students to our community, and as well as our technology. So those are the 4 areas that I'm going to speak to today. We can go to the next slide. In our teacher preparation, we spent a lot of time in professional development with our staff. And our goal in this professional development was to help our teachers build a toolbox with a variety of tools and resources that they could use in digital learning. Not everything works for everyone, and so we wanted to give them a variety of things, hoping that they would find something that they felt comfortable with, that their students could respond to well, and that everybody was happy with. One of the things that worked really well for us is we did a technology showcase with our staff. So we went to some of our teacher leaders that had a good plan for e-learning days, and we asked them to just showcase that to the rest of the staff. We had some who struggled a little bit and just didn't know what they were going to do. So by showcasing those teachers that did have good ideas, the other teachers were able to maybe mimic that or tweak it a little bit to make it work for them. So that was probably one of our most successful things that we did. You know, we stressed, and the building level principals stressed to the teachers that there needed to be rigor and relevance to their e-learning assignments. They had a lot of things they needed to work out with their students, where they go to find the assignments, how they communicate with their teacher, what the deadline for submission was, how to submit it, what would happen if the assignment was late. So those are all things that each of the teachers were expected to speak about with their students. Next slide. Then was our student preparation. In our student preparation, we wanted to make sure that all of the students, whether they were in kindergarten or whether they were seniors, knew how to communicate with their teachers on a snow day or an e-learning day. And we had a variety of methods that were available to them. We set up a technology hotline number, and we posted that on every piece of social media that we had. We have a calling system where we can phone every home, and we phoned that number to all of the homes, so they would have that. And if they couldn't get a hold of the teacher, they would call us, and we would get them in touch with the teacher. But most of the time, the students knew, and the parents knew how to get a hold of the teacher on that day. The students were expected to know how to submit their homework. They were expected to know when the deadlines were, and they were expected to know how to get help if they needed help, who to call, and how to go about that. One of the things that we did early on is we did a survey of our parents on what type of connectivity at home they had. And I guess this is a lesson learned. You don't want to just ask in the survey if they have the internet connectivity at home. We need to ask them what kind of internet connectivity they have at home. I didn't expect that a cell phone with a data plan would be their internet connectivity, but some of them, that was it. So we needed to be, and we learned our lesson there, we needed to be a little bit more specific when we asked what kind of internet connectivity we had at home. When the teachers then got the results of the survey, then they were able to take a look at the list and see what students had internet connectivity, what students didn't, and then they made alternate plans with those students that did not have internet connectivity. Whether it be a paper pen assignment, they might have downloaded assignments before they went home the day before and then could submit the assignments once they got back to school the next day. So they had a variety of options that they could do there if there was no internet connectivity at home. We had about 85% of our student population that did have internet connectivity. Next slide. The next thing we needed to do was to prepare our community for this. So our superintendent did a letter to everybody in the community, parents, as well as local libraries, businesses, daycare centers, that type of thing, as to what we were doing. Then One of the people that we left out, I guess I should say early on, were the daycare centers. And we got a couple of phone calls from the daycare centers saying, we'd really like to know when these days are going to happen so that we can plan for extra people in our daycare center that day. So we put them on the call system so they know when there was a cancellation, when there was going to be an e-learning day, so that they could be prepared for that. Obviously, we advertised on social media, that type of thing too, but we did go to our school board, mapped out our plan, got approval from them to move ahead, and then we let everybody else know. And it was important that that happened early in the school year. Next slide. Technology. We did a lot of work in the background to make sure that our mobile filters were working like they should at home. Our teachers stressed to their students that they needed to make sure their devices were at home early in the year to make sure everything worked at home like it did at school. Let us know if it wasn't so we could take a look at that. Made sure that we had plenty of technicians on staff on those snow days so that we could answer calls and help them out over the phone, get them in touch with their teachers if they needed, that type of thing. And we monitored the web traffic that day. It was fun to start seeing the assignments pop up through the web traffic. We monitored social media. People would post on social media if they were having issues, things like that. And we also made some house calls. We had one student who could not get logged on. She tried and tried. Finally, the parents called, and I said, do you care if we, try to make it to your house? And so a couple of us in a four-wheel drive made it to her house and switched her out and gave her a new device and got her logged on. So I made sure that the parents knew that we were going to do that before we did. But just a lot of work in the background to make sure that everything was going to run as smoothly as we wanted it to. Okay, next slide. And here's just a graphic display of our IT help requests. And you can see that there's the sunshine days and there are the rain cloud days. We had already been part of the IDOE consortium to do some e-learning days on good weather days. So we had 4 of those pre-planned and scheduled. And as you can see, the first couple, the one in November and January, on the tech side were a little rough. We had a lot of phone calls come in those days. And it was because it was new. People were a little bit unsure of what to expect and a little bit afraid to do things. So we had a lot of technicians on staff to answer those calls. Our superintendent walked in and said it reminded him of the Jerry Lewis telethon with all the phones and all the people answering the phones that day. But as you can see, as the year progressed, those tech calls decreased dramatically. The teachers were used to what they were supposed to do. The students were used to what they were supposed to do. The parents knew what to expect, and so there were fewer questions as the year progressed. Next slide. Just a quick timeline. We made sure that we got board approval. We asked the DOE for permission to do this, and then we started planning in the 4 categories that we talked about. Next slide. Here are some things that we needed to plan for, and I think everybody needs to look at that. What do you do with your students that have special needs? And we started last year writing into our IEPs that our students would be, with IEPs, would be participating in e-learning days, and the teacher of record for that particular student would make a personal phone call to that home on each e-learning day to make sure that they could offer any assistance or any help that they may need. And so we put that into the IEPs so that the parents and the students all knew it was going to happen and knew what to expect with that. The next one, what do you do with students that don't have Wi-Fi access? And again, we made sure that the teachers knew the students that did or did not have Wi-Fi access and made sure that they made other arrangements with those students. What do we need to do to provide free and reduced lunch for our students? And that really only applied on our scheduled good weather e-learning days. We needed to worry about that. The schools were open on those days for anyone that did want to come in for lunch. And then also, what tools do our teachers need to be successful? Again, I can't stress enough the amount of time we spend in professional development with our staff, making sure that each one of them had what they needed to be successful on e-learning days. I see one of the questions in the chat, who made the calls? The teacher of record for that particular special needs student would make the call to the home and speak either with the student or the parent to see if there was any help that they could offer on those days. Okay, next slide. These are just some testimonials, some things that people said or responded back to us. Most of them were via social media on how well they liked them, how well they went, and I hope that we could continue doing our e-learning days. Next slide. And then these are just a couple of questions. We did a survey after our e-learning days to make sure that we were doing what we needed to do and if there was anything that we needed to change for this next year. And so this is just one of the questions, but we wanted to make sure that the work that was being assigned was rigorous, was relevant, and also was appropriate for the grade level and their ability level. And we got pretty good results there. And I have links to all of those surveys and results if anybody would like to see those. Next slide. Here, what means of communication did you use to interact with your students? And you can see here that our students used a variety of methods. However, email seemed to be the most popular. Next slide. These are the three experts, I guess, in the community, our superintendent, our middle school principal, and myself. We would be happy to answer any kinds of questions that you have, help out in anything. I know that I've sent some surveys and some letters that we've written to our community to prepare them for e-learning days. I would be happy to share those, as well as the website that the Flex Consortium put together. All the 4 schools that did e-learning on scheduled days last year put together a website of tips and tricks, and I think there are lots of things there that you might find of value. And I'll take any kind of questions you might have.
And so, Judy, I really appreciate your take on it from Maconaquah's point of view. And I think just because of time, and I want to give everybody plenty of time, if people have questions for Judy, if they could put them in the chat window, and I know she can watch that and answer them. But again, we really appreciate what Maconaquah did on the actual event, and as I've posted a little bit in the chat window there, that is probably the trickiest way to do it. And I visited a district last week who wants to do that this year. And again, for the students with special needs, they did the same kind of thing. Starting last spring, they started working that into other IEP conferences to make sure that they were prepared for that. So it does take some advanced planning. So we're going to move over now to Yorktown Community Schools, and Yorktown did this last year very successfully on makeup days as an option for their makeup. So I'm going to let Holly introduce herself and share all about what's going on, what happened in Yorktown. Thanks, Holly.
Good afternoon. My name is Holly Stachler, and I am Technology Integration Specialist for Yorktown Community Schools. Like Candace said, we did run 3 online learning days actually last year as a way to recover some time that we were out for inclement weather. We chose to do the online option because we missed 10 days of school last year, and that's a lot for and I know a lot of people are in the same boat, but we felt like that was a lot here, and more than we had seen, and that we really felt like it was the only way we could recover that time. We wanted to capture quality instructional minutes, which we did not feel that we could do by tacking minutes on to a typical school day. We didn't feel like those minutes would turn into quality minutes, so we didn't feel like that was an option for us. We also wanted to do it before high-stakes testing, so by tacking time onto the end of the year, days onto the end, we didn't feel like that was an option for us either. So really, as an administrative team, we felt like the online option was the way to go. It also, I will say, the online option gave us the ability to avoid scheduling issues for non-certified staff by adding on minutes to the day. That was an issue for some of our transportation people who have second jobs and those kinds of things. We also like the idea of challenging our teachers. We have a pretty techie school system, and so this was kind of a way to kind of raise the bar a little bit and have them step up to provide some of those online instructional strategies that they might not do on a regular basis in their classroom. So on the slide that we're on right now, we had a certain structure that we followed for our online learning days. We had time requirements that everyone was expected to meet. So for elementary, that was 5 hours of instructional time for those students and 6 hours of instructional time for our secondary students. And that time meant actually time spent completing the activities, being engaged in instruction. The teacher time, their time was spent preparing the digital instruction and then supporting the completion at home. And how we did that is we basically allotted 2 hours of prep time for their bundles, for them to prepare their Campus bundles for their students, and then 4 hours of office hour support. And we also let our teachers decide how they were going to provide that support, whether it be through Campus, through email, through phone, through text, just to be there for them. We also, prior to announcing online learning days, our administrative team met and did basically all of the back-end work. We drafted expectations for teachers, expectations for students, outlined all of that for parents. We then presented that to our staff first. And while we were seeking their input on that, we wanted to know what they thought, suggestions for us, maybe things that we didn't think of. We really weren't asking for their permission because it was a scary thing for some of them. It took a lot of them out of their comfort zone. And we kind of decided this was the route we were going to take. So we were more trying to convince them that this was the best option for our district and the reasons why, based on some of the things I spoke about earlier. We then communicated our plan with our students and their families through mass email, mass phone calls. We let them know it was coming. We really gave them about 2 weeks' notice before we ran our first one. We tried to anticipate issues that the participants might have, and we tried to be prepared to talk them through that prior to the event. So we did take a lot of phone calls and answer a lot of emails about concerns. We encouraged our stakeholders, everybody, to address those concerns prior to the day so that they went into it with an open mind and we could alleviate some of those concerns in advance. Some things that we did for support on online learning days is we opened our computer labs. Our online learning days officially took place on a Saturday. We looked to recover 1 day of instruction by having 1 day of instruction. We had bundles that students could access from 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. This was our first online learning day. We opened them at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and we kept them open to 8 o'clock on Monday. We did not overlap any online learning time with our regular instructional time because we weren't making it up on the actual day of the event. We wanted to make sure, we were very concerned about double dipping, and we wanted to make sure we were trying to recover instructional time. So having the students sit in classes and work on their bundles was defeating the purpose of that. So we were very adamant about that those online learning activities needed to take place outside of our regular time because of double dipping. Some important, so we had our computer labs open on that Saturday from 9 to 3. Students could sign up. They had to reserve a spot, but they could sign up. And we too, like Maconaquah, we had surveyed everybody. We knew how we were with connectivity. We're in a unique situation because we don't have, our students don't take home devices K-12. We're only take home devices 5 and up. So we had to offer some labs so that students could have access to devices. Some families chose to access our labs because they had multiple children and only one device. So you think about the hours of time they were going to spend working on these activities for them all to come and do it at once. And if you look at some of the pictures on the side, you see our superintendent. She helped out in the labs as well. I helped out in the labs. For our elementary students, parents came and helped out in the labs. We also had community mentors come and do that. We had quite a bit of takers for lab space on the first online learning day, and that dropped significantly the second once parents and families were more comfortable with that. We also offered a tech helpline that was offered 24 hours all weekend long. So it opened at 3 o'clock on Friday with the online learning bundles and closed at the same time. That helpline was me. And so, although we are a much smaller district than some districts, so I was able to take all the calls. We felt it was important that families got consistent support, so I was happy to do that. The first weekend, I will tell you, I took 52 phone calls, which I didn't think was too bad. 52 phone calls. The last online learning weekend we had, I took 4. So folks got a lot more comfortable with it. Special ed is huge. We also added to our IEPs the fact that online learning could take place. That was an option. We also had again, we have a much smaller district, that our special education teachers did individualized online learning bundles for their students based on their IEPs. We also offered, we had a special education teacher on campus on the online learning day, and we offered that those students could come to school because we too, when Candace said special ed is what we worry about the most, we were very concerned about that. So we wanted to overcompensate more than anything for our special education students who needed that support. We even provided transportation if the parents requested it. I will tell you, we did not have many takers on that. I love the idea of teachers of records making phone calls, so I appreciate you guys sharing that. I think that's good just to check in. We'll certainly add that to our plan for next year. If you could switch to the next slide, please. So our online learning bundles, we use My Big Campus here, and what we ask that our teachers do is develop online learning bundles that had an instructional piece, some kind of instructional piece, followed by practice or application for each subject area that they did. We were not okay with teachers creating bundles that were just a bunch of practice games in a row, or even a bunch of little videos to watch. We wanted to have authentic instruction in those. Bundles, teachers would create their bundles and they submitted them to principals who then passed them off to myself and our literacy media specialist, and we reviewed them all. It was nice because some grade levels worked together, so I would have like a 3rd grade bundle. Yes, I'm happy to share some of those bundle links. I may have to send those out in just a bit, but I will get those for you. We reviewed them all for quality. We wanted to make sure that we were comfortable as a district knowing what the parents would see because we thought it was reflective of our regular instruction, so we wanted it to be quality. Again, we had to do a hybrid of digital and paper pencil because our younger children did not have access to a take-home device from school. So it was kind of impossible to know what they could do, what kind of programs and things they would have on their devices. So the instruction was delivered digitally. The teachers would video themselves or they would provide some other things, and the instruction was digital, but some of their practice and application things, especially for the younger children, were on paper and pencil. Again, when we reviewed those bundles, not only were we looking for quality, but we were looking for functionality. When you don't know what kind of device students will be using to access, you have to be very careful of what you put in there. For example, you can't put a lot of things that are flash-based if your students are going to be accessing them on iPads. You've got to be careful about those kinds of things. So we kind of checked for functionality of that as well. Again, this was new to a lot of, especially our elementary teachers. Our big kid teachers, they were good with curating that digital content, but it was new to a lot of our younger teachers, so we wanted to make sure we supported them on that. We did say that their work submission had to follow typical means. So because our one-to-one grade levels were good with submitting work through My Big Campus and those kinds of things, that's how they were allowed to continue to do it. We kind of discouraged our K-4 from creating like My Big Campus school work assignments and those kinds of things because our little people just weren't used to completing those. So we didn't want to throw anything crazy at them that would trip them up. If you could advance, please. We too held, we surveyed after our online learning day #1, and the largest majority of our people we surveyed, which we did parents, teachers, and we did students 3rd grade and up. We weren't sure about the accuracy of the results of the smaller kids. And what came out of it was some workload concerns. Some of our students in like our AP classes, a lot of our high school students, they really kind of felt like they got slammed with workload, and we were not unsympathetic to that. So what we did was we kind of negotiated, and we opened our bundles on Thursday evening. Now, our concern about double dipping was still very real. We just really wanted to be sure that they had the time at home that they needed to be able to access those things. So they were not to work on them at school still, unless they had an ELC time, but we did open them Thursday evening to help with those. We did 3 online learning days in less than a 2-month time, so it became almost a weekend. I mean, it was kind of a weekend issue with some athletics and those kinds of things. You can look at our attendance at the bottom there. We had great attendance. We tracked that across the board. It was as good or better than a usual day in Yorktown, so we were very thrilled with that. You can see that we did have a request for more authentic instruction in our elementary bundles. That is because our teachers weren't as comfortable building that digital content. So we talked to them about that, and we did some additional PD on that, and we got them where they needed to be, and it was much better. The survey results, the parents really appreciated that for the second and third days. If you could advance, please. We have some pros and cons here, and I'll let you read through those a little bit. But basically, the biggest pro was we recovered the time that we wanted to recover, and that was great. It really did allow teachers to put their digital learning and the creation of that digital content to the test, and that was great for us. You'll look at my last pro, which is require parents to be involved in the student learning experience, which is awesome. You'll also see it's also the last con. I will tell you, online learning is taxing for those kindergarten parents who have to sit there with them and walk them through every step, and we understand that. But all of the families appreciated the opportunity to do that, and it really helped them. They even said in the surveys and the tweets and things that we got, it had a better, they had a better understanding of what was on in the classroom then as well. So that it certainly was a pro, but I can see where it was taxing to them as well. If you could advance, please. So there were some unexpected benefits that we had here, and you can see a lot of, these are basically just screenshots from Twitter that I took. I would recommend if you do an online learning day that you get a hashtag to put with it and encourage folks to share what's happening. It helps us, our administrative team, keep a pulse on what was going on and some attitudes about it, and really we were very happy about the attitudes that we saw. It also fostered some collaboration between our teachers. You can see that one of our teachers pointed out that they got some ideas from their daughter's kindergarten bundle for their own high school Spanish class, which was awesome. You can see some things that teachers had their kids doing, like there was a sports med class who had their kids watch a video on how to wrap an ankle appropriately, and then they had to practice on someone in their household. So it was very creative. Some cooking things to do math. It was very creative. It wasn't just sit in front of a device and soak it in. It was watch a little bit, learn a little bit, and be active on that a little bit. So we really appreciated that. My favorite's the little picture of the door with the online learning note, or with a note that says, "Do not disturb, we are e-learning, come back later." It shows how families really kind of valued that time. I was glad that they tweeted that out. Okay, next slide, please. We are looking ahead to this winter, and we're working on establishing expectations for quality digital learning experiences and making our use of our learning management system, which in our case is My Big Campus, more uniform across the district. We feel like that'll help families if resources are going into resources and that's where they know they can find the bundles. It'll help families who have students in kindergarten and in 11th grade. We are giving a lot of our PD right now is focusing on building and curating digital content, but that is big. And ways you can use that in class, not just outside of class, but in class as well. We feel the more that our teachers do that, the more quality it will be. And we're really working with our elementary people to get our younger students more comfortable with My Big Campus, how to log on easily, how to navigate it, how to find your things. That was one of a lot of my calls on that first day were simply getting kids logged in. So we want to alleviate that even in kindergarten by having them use that LMS a little bit more in class, even though they may not need to out of necessity, just to kind of get that digital learning going. So it's been beneficial to everyone. Last slide, please. So if you have any questions, you add them to the chat box, and I'll try to answer those the best we can from our perspective. Candace has provided my email there, and you can feel free to email me as well. I also have a contact information for our literacy media specialist, Stephanie O'Neill. She played a key role in helping with support teachers during online learning as well. So you can always contact her with both of us, and we can help you maybe a little faster that way. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Holly, and thank everybody at Yorktown for being such a great model. Just like Maconaquah and Zionsville, I've had to count on you guys numerous times to answer questions, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. You know, you made so many good points. One of the things I wanted to just hit on real quickly, and then I'll turn over to Zionsville. I know they'll take this and build upon it too. You know, from our legal department, we need to see an equal amount of time. So if you 6 hours for high school, 5 hours for others equals a day of instructional learning to equal that 180 days across the board. But how it's hard to match that up. So I know for just like Yorktown, and I know Zionsville did the same kind of thing, you know, you have that makeup day is assigned to that Saturday, and teachers have to be available during those times that you're counting, but also students can have a longer period of time to complete their work. But one of the biggest pieces that we want to keep emphasizing beyond that of those students with special needs and accommodations are that instruction has to be taking place. There has to be interaction with teachers, and there has to be some instruction. So I've seen it done where there are actual teachers holding Google Hangouts with air so that they can actually present live at certain times of the day, just down to teachers doing live chats or through phone messaging and email. So we just have to make sure that there are some of those ways of that kind of instruction to go back and forth. So anyway, thank you again, Holly, and she'll be watching those questions. And we'll turn it over now to our next group, my friends from Zionsville. And I know Zionsville has done something with what they called before kind of a gradual release and getting their teachers on board and what this could really look like. And I thought that was a very helpful thing. I've shared that with lots of people, so I know they've had lots of calls. So thank you, Zionsville, for being here. I don't know who's going to talk first, so I'll let you take it away.
Thanks. Thanks, Candace. And if everyone can stick around to the very end of our presentation, too, we have all of our communication that we sent out, all of our resources and sample lessons available with a link at the very end. So that might be helpful. Dan?
If you go to the next slide, you can see that our goals weren't too different than everybody else's. We wanted to reduce the number of days. We wanted to make sure we got some more instruction in prior to the AP testing. But on top of that, I think one of the big pieces, we had a chance to deviate from the norm a little bit here, and it was exciting to a lot of us. One of the pieces, we had very prepared students, we had very prepared staff, and they were ready to take this challenge on. So it was an amazing chance to actually model that growth mindset that we ask all of our students to have day in and day out. So our staff really jumped on board with it, and it was a really nice piece for us to do and model.
Next slide.
Important considerations. Obviously, this was a snow makeup day is going to be quite a bit different on a digital learning scale because we did the Saturday piece. We gave that out ahead of time, and they were allowed to work on it throughout the evenings. But it was quite a bit different than what we were normally accustomed to with e-learning being in the classroom. It was a chance to break down those four walls and actually have a real digital experience for our kids.
Next slide, please.
You can see our process. We did do quite a bit of surveying, just like everybody else has done. We had about 900 families that responded. You can see these numbers here. 86% were supporting the e-learning options. 69% wanted to do the e-learning makeup Saturdays. One of the best pieces we had throughout this whole thing was the really strong partnership with our ZEA. They were on board. We were on board. It was a really great system for us to work with. We had workshops for our teachers, as you can see here. Those were really well attended. People generally wanted to learn more about this, and it gave us an opportunity to learn more about some of the digital means that we had available to us.
Next slide, please. And just similar to what Yorktown did, we did 3 Saturdays as our official E-days to make up for 3 of the snow days that had occurred earlier in the year. A big thing that we did, our students in the elementary are not one-to-one, so we surveyed and 98% of our families have a computer at home. So we expected them to use their home computer. And whether that device was an old Mac, a brand new computer, an iPad, a phone, we wanted to make sure all of our lessons could be tested and retested on whatever device someone had. At our middle school, we are one-to-one, and now at high school, we are one-to-one, but students may bring their own device. So we have a variety of devices we're working with. And it was key that we spent time testing and retesting all of the lessons. We did a lot of planning for special needs students, just like everyone else. We took our modules that we made, and then the special ed teachers looked at them based on IEPs to co-design and make accommodations based on those, and then also provided some in-school work that would supplement those if they didn't meet IEP goals. So we were very concerned about making sure all of those were met. We did, similar to Yorktown, an early release. So we released lessons on a Tuesday, and then the actual E-Day was considered our Saturday. We had Saturday office hours. Saturday schools were open so that if you did not have a device or if you needed assistance, you could come in. And teachers also had office hours after school, so we did not consider that double dipping since this was all out of school office hours, out of contract office hours, but also students were permitted to do the work when they were ready to do the work and when it made sense in their life over the course of the week. So we gave them the flexibility to be e-learners like we hope they will be in the future. Next slide, please. So we did have those supervised computer lab hours in our schools, and then also our public library was a great partner, and we let them know ahead of time what Saturdays and what weeks we were doing as our E-Days. We had hotlines set up just like the other schools so that people could call. We had very few calls, but just knowing that those hotlines were available I think was helpful. And then our lessons were due the Monday after the Saturday E-Day. So we were able to verify that everyone had completed it for our attendance. Next slide. Candace had talked a little bit about our gradual release, and because our elementary team had not done as many e-learning lessons, we did a common E-Day lesson for each grade level across the district. So we pulled together a group of teachers for first grade, and they created the very first lesson that was similar for everyone, and we rolled it out. Every first grader across the district had the exact same lesson. Then the second E-Day that we had, that was a building level E-Day, and so all the first grade teachers at one building would have the same lesson, and the third day, each individual teacher had their own lesson. This allowed us to show a great example of a lesson for the first go-round, and then the teachers could build off that and make it more their own as we moved along. And it was really great for teachers to be able to share what they were doing. The one thing that we also worked on and we found out is that we wanted to make sure that when teachers are doing this individually, that the lessons were building. Kindergarten wasn't doing the same thing as first grade, the same themed activities, that there was some gradual building of the content that we were doing. So having some one person, designated teacher, administrator at the school really helps double check for that. Next slide, please. So just as I said, we shared all of those lessons across our district. The beta testing was very important. So once teachers completed their lessons, they would send it to several other teachers and an administrator. I was one of the people that would test it on several devices. We wanted to make sure that there weren't any objectionable pop-ups or that the content was appropriate for the students, especially at the elementary level, as this was new to this team. So we spent a lot of time doing that and making sure we understood the tools that we could be using to make sure that our lessons were safe and appropriate, and learned a lot through that process that we can use for this year. Next slide, please.
To to piggyback off of that, a lot of the tools we used, everything from the Safe Share TV so that we could embed YouTube videos without any ads, nothing pops up at the end that may take a student to another area. Those are on that last slide that the website will be sharing at the very end. This, what you're seeing in front of you right now to set standards for quality, that document was prepared by one of our STEM teachers at the elementary level, and it's a great way to look at this. It still talks about the quality that we can have in a digital lesson. It should be the exact same standard as we ask for in the classroom. So as we look at that, there was backwards design. We looked at what do we want students to be able to do at the end of this digital lesson. And that was the premise for what we were doing within the lesson. The content, it needed to be informative, engaging. We wanted to personalize it. One of the nice pieces from some of our elementary perspective was the teachers were on there videotaping themselves, talking to students, reading books to the students. Whatever that was, the teachers were trying to be as much a part of that as they could possibly be. They were asking for authentic tasks, higher level thought, differentiated work. There were pieces that we saw that teachers were able to do some really nice pieces of differentiation within the lesson, and students knew where they needed to be on some of those. The communication among students and teachers, you'll see some of our lessons in there. They were communicating with one another, interacting with one another through blogs or other sites. We were trying to get after creativity and collaboration to construct meaning in what we were doing. So all of that's kind of found in here, and it also, as you can see, has some tools and some examples as well. If you'll go 2 slides from now, you can see an example of the Padlet. One more there. You can see this was the typical Padlet, and it went in a chronological order, very linear. The elementary teachers really liked that piece of it. But right there, you can click on just about anything on that screen, and something will pop up. This one you're seeing right in the middle, the first grade e-learning checklist. Typically on each one of those are a video. The teacher is narrating that piece, so the students would click on that, and it would go through, here's what you're going to be learning about today, and take them through all of those pieces. And that was a nice piece for our students, especially on that first one. They felt really secure in what they were doing. Again, we have some of our example pieces, some of our Padlets. I think there's 5 or 6 of them actually from the elementary level on that website that you'll see at the very end. So if you go to the next slide. Chris touched on this just a little bit. We spent quite a bit of time on that first one going through all links, making sure they work for the PC and Mac. We learned a lot about Flash and how it works with Mac, or I guess doesn't work with Mac. We wanted to make sure all documents were linked properly, so lots of safeguards and checks were done there. One of the pieces we were concerned about, and we asked a lot of our teachers to check on, were citations. We wanted to give credit where credit was due. So we were constantly trying to make sure we were doing those pieces as well. Again, those ads that like to pop up within YouTube videos, we found some ways around those. That Safe Share TV, I recommend that to anybody. It was a great, we found that actually later on. We started working with the HTML in those pieces, and it was really complicated at first. And then we found the Safe Share TV, and it really helped us so that we could get some of those nice YouTube videos in there, and it really helped, crystallize the picture for what we wanted our students to do. And then making sure the directions made sense. A lot of times it was nice to have that secondary person check it and look at it and say, I couldn't figure out what you were talking about there. I think a student might struggle with that as well. So we did some of those pieces as well. Next slide.
And then when our E-Day arrived, we made sure that we had common messaging across the district. So our elementary message that went out came from our district office so that it was similar to all elementary parents. The same thing, the high school and middle schools in Zionsville sent out a similar message from their buildings, and it also had a Google Doc showing all the staff office hours, so that if your child had multiple teachers or you had multiple children, you could figure out where the office hours were and who you could contact. We had several reminders that were sent out, and support people were in place. And this was district-wide, very similar, so that everyone was getting the same message from us. Next slide, please. And our next slide talks a little bit just more about what we were trying to work with our special education students. Some of the E-Day experiences were changed and altered for academic needs, but we also had some functional students with functional needs. And then, so some of their choices were provided that were on their IEPs. So we do have functional skills listed on the IEPs, and this was a great way to practice these skills. We did have some great comments from our parents of functional IEP students who said, you know, this is a great opportunity for me to see what my child can do because we don't practice these things at home. I know they've been practicing them at school. Or to say, I want my child to have this on their IEP because it is the least restrictive environment. They're doing what their peers are doing by trying to get on the computer and do some of these activities. And while we altered them, we still made it so that they were having the same experience as all of our students. And the next slide is another example of our academic and functional activities that we provided for special education students. And you can also see that we provided a lot of office hours. And also, I know that Maconaquah had made those phone calls home. Our teachers also did that similarly. They both made phone calls home and then contacted through emails the parents just to let them know ahead of time these were coming, and then also to ask questions and check in during the window that we gave them. And next slide. We had nearly 100% attendance on E-Days, so we verified attendance by having them submit their assignments at the end. Our parent concerns were few. One of the biggest things we did realize, which is the same with Yorktown, is for elementary students, the parents had to spend a lot of time with their students. So that was both a plus and a minus. We also realized and got feedback, if you have several elementary students with one computer at home, it was very difficult for parents to complete everything, and it would be very difficult on an actual snow day to get that all done in one day. So providing a window of submission really helped us with that so that they could use the computer appropriately. And in thinking about doing digital snow days right on the snow days, that's one thing that we will be considering is how could they actually get that completed if you only have one device. A huge celebration was how much our teacher capacity increased by skyrocketing right into this project. They had to learn pretty quickly all the different kinds of shareware and programs that we had, and it was great for them to jump in with the students and learn this material. The teacher feedback was very positive, and when June rolled around, everyone was very happy that we had accomplished this big task and weren't still in school. And our last slide.
This is basically that resource we've been talking about there. If you go to the Evolving School Day, you can see it's a blog that basically has all of our resources. It's got a first page and it has some materials on there, a Prezi that we were going to speak on at one point. It's got basically everybody that was going to be involved from our school district in an e-learning situation. It's got their emails on there. It's got communications that we sent out. It's got survey results. It's got sample lessons. It's got, it's K through 12 on that from our middle school as well. It's got a lot of the tools we use. Some of those are interactive as well, so I'll be checking that. Actually, we'll all be checking that from time to time. And there are some pieces on there where you can click and ask questions or leave comments, and we'll try to get to those as we see them pop up as well. So it should be a nice resource. Feel free to check it out.
Well, thank you so much for all that you've shared from Zionsville. I do love the idea of gradual release, and I think all of you, and I've noticed this in the chat window too, this has been just the idea of these and being able to use this kind of virtual learning has really been a lever for many of our districts all across the state who had been kind of, in this area using it at certain grade levels, or certain teachers were doing more with blended and virtual learning. And then suddenly when everyone saw a great necessity for it, it was a lot easier to get people on board, both educators and families. And especially to use a lot of the tools that we've had in place and people really just weren't utilizing. So I think it's been both a great challenge for everyone, but a great learning experience. It's really pushed us ahead. I noticed that just recently there's been a lot of information in the paper or in some journals about Pennsylvania doing this, and I find it so funny because Pennsylvania called us last year called the DOE and said, hey, we see that Indiana, I think Maconaquah was on CNN, and they wanted to talk to us about, so I shared everything that was going on, and then they're doing it this year. So I just thought, you know, Pennsylvania, of all places, you would have thought they would have had a plan for snow probably before Indiana. But I can't be more proud of the work that these 3 districts have done and many of our other districts who also entered into this. Thank you again, all of you, for sharing today, and for all the rest of you for being here. Like I said at the beginning, the information about this process for being the virtual option for inclement weather, you can see it there. Mary's just put up our homepage, so that's the Office of eLearning homepage that you can get to right off of the Indiana Department of Ed page. If you drop down any of the administrators, educator tabs, you'll find Office of eLearning. You can get to it right there. So there's lots of questions answered there. There'll be a link to, we'll put a link to this webinar there. There's one from last spring's webinar now, and also the application to apply to be okay to use the virtual option this coming year is active now. So if your school district is considering that, there's a lot to think about, and you can see that from everything that was shared today. And I'm happy to help and answer those questions. So the other things I just want to remind you, Mary, you'll also see on our page just a couple, there's that connected educator information right there. We also have the Summer of eLearning application is open right now. We've got our online communities of practice. We've got a lot of exciting things going. So even beyond our virtual option, I hope that you'll check out our Office of eLearning. Next slide, Mary. I think there was a sneak peek there into our, yes, we have another webinar coming up. Building and Growing Your PLN, which will be on October 14th, and we're going to have more topics and things that are going to be coming up in November very soon. I know Mary always likes to share, and I do too, that we're always looking to meet your needs. So if there's topics or information that you'd like to hear other districts sharing about what they're doing, please send us an email, reach out to us, and we'd love to try to arrange one of those webinars for everybody. So that's going on. We have our Twitter chat, I think on our next slide, happens every Thursday evening at #INELearn. And you can see this week's topic is right there, but every single Thursday evening at 9 o'clock Eastern time, you can get on there and learn lots with lots of people. I know many of the people that are on today are part of that. And then lastly, on our last slide, we have ways of keeping in contact with us. So again, I know there's our website, the Learning Lab. We have Twitter. I think if you can always remember INELearn, you can get to us. We have a Google+, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram. We're just about everywhere, trying to meet everybody's needs where they are. So thank you all so much for tuning in with us today. And again, thank you to my 3 districts for sharing and for being leaders in innovative ways of providing teaching and learning for our students. So everybody have a great afternoon and a great rest of the week. Thank you.